Jamell Crouthers started writing at the age of 13. It wasn't until his 30s where he realized he could impact others with his writing. Jamel was able to incorporate a prose format and social issues and be able to write books on what's going on in the world today. Writing about social issues is something that Jamel is very concerned about, and his writing journey has allowed him to write books on various subjects. His goal is to change the world one book at a time. And in today's episode of Auto Interview, it's my utmost pleasure, joy and excitement to have on the show today, Jamel Crouthers. How are you doing today, Jamel? Welcome on the show.
Thank you for having me on the show. Doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing very fine, actually. I must say it's quite lovely that we are here to sit down across continents, virtue of the internet connectivity and Zoom connections, to have this beautiful conversation around your book. I'm really looking forward to this. So thank you once again for joining in.
All right. Thanks a lot for having me. I appreciate it greatly.
Absolutely. So, Jamia, I must say that I'm first impressed reading through your book, and I wanted to start from this section of my question because you deliberately obscured the race of the narrator, and I am a bit intrigued to want to find out what does this choice says about how we as readers are conditioned to interpret suffering through racial stereotypes. That may be a sort of a hard way to start, but let's see.
Well, to be very honest, when I do start writing my books, I don't do the whole race thing.
Mm,
I focus on the character and the storyline. I think that's the most important part. So when you leave race out of it, you kind of come into the story and you're going to read it and read it from just that person's perspective. We are conditioned, to want to know the race of a character or anything like that, when you are reading books. Out of all the books that I've written, probably a handful of them, you're going to know the race of a person. So it's even in a lot of my other books where, I don't incorporate the whole race part of it. I think it allows us to have more empathy and
yeah.
relate to characters a lot more when you kind of leave that kind of out of the mix.
Mm. And that's such an amazing one, really. The struggles and growth of a man. If you have a copy of it, I'd like you to show it to the camera, just so it's what it looks like. Yeah, that's a beautiful one, really. That's a beautiful one. Yeah, thank you. And the book portrays the heavy responsibility of being a role model in some ways, especially to a younger brother. Now, how has your own understanding of influence and accountability shaped your writing, if in any way, actually?
Well, role models are very important in life, just in general. So, yeah, with, this book, the main character, Robert, he has a younger brother, Michael, and, Robert made, certain mistakes in his life that contributed to Michael's decisions and, certain things, occurred, throughout this story and throughout this book series. So, when I am, going into, writing stories, you gotta like kind of juice it up a little bit. So,
Absolutely.
I think, that was a good component to add, to, the book series. And, when, you look at, the world and, the way, people kind of maneuver. A lot of times, when we are kids, we look up to, either our parents or an older sibling or, an uncle or anything like that. So, that's, definitely, something that I wanted to utilize, with this book and also, throughout the book series.
That's an amazing one, actually. That's a beautiful technique you've got in there, and I love the way you skillfully and beautifully utilize it in the story. Now, one of the most interesting thing I found reading through the struggles and growth of a man is the narrator struggles with loving himself, which I'll say is quote unquote the hardest thing. Now, why do you think self love is particularly difficult for men in marginalized or difficult circumstances? And this is actually something that is even quite predominant in our world today. You can see it almost everywhere. But I'd like to hear more particularly from you why you think self love is particularly difficult for men in marginalized or difficult circumstances. Let's see.
It's difficult for men to love themselves because it starts when you're a little kid.
Yeah.
And when you're a little kid, I know like, for me, like, we fall and we hurt ourselves and it's like we cry and stuff like that.
Uh,
And we get told, no, you don't cry, be tough, like you're gonna be
man.
fine, stuff like that. Right. So that's the start of it, right? Like in your childhood, it's like, oh, you're gonna be fine, or oh, toughen up, or oh, you'll get through it, or whatever the case is.
Mm,
And it's harder for us as we get older to love ourselves because society is constantly telling us what to do, who to be, how to conduct ourselves, what
absolutely.
constitutes a man. And
Mm,
you're seeing it way more predominantly, way more now with just like, okay, this is what you need to be. This is what kind of job you need to have. This is how much money you make. This is how you get to where so it's just constant, yeah, constant of just us constantly feeling under this pressure and
mm,
these, epitomes of like, okay, this is what personifies a man or things like that. So I'm thankful that more conversations are happening now between us as men of, how, we are managing and going through the world and how we're, managing and things like that, right? So I'll open up on a more personal level, right? In
mm.
2020, when the pandemic hit, we all got sent home.
Yeah.
I lost, my gym and being able to work out and things like that. I went through a bout of depression, right? And I hit it and I went and got, the help, but didn't tell anybody really until like 3 months later, right? So when I opened up to like the closest people in my inner circle, they understood a lot, right? And I think from that point on, with me and like my close male friends, we start to talk more about what we're dealing with and what we're going through and things of that nature. Now, certain friends I can text and certain friends I can talk to on the phone. And
Yeah.
then there's my best friend where it's like, we're going to talk to each other in person when I'm back home in New York. And that's when we
Uh,
have those conversations. He's not going to sit and text and do all that stuff. So I know like how to maneuver and talk to, different people. That's the empathy, part of me and who I am. So I do check-ins on my friends just to make sure they're good. They do check-ins on me. Hey, Mel, you good? Stuff like that. I live alone. I'm in Arizona. I have no family. I have, a few friends, things of that nature. So I'm by myself a lot, but it's fine. I'm an only child, so it works. But I will say it starts, from when you're a kid, and then as you, grow into an adult, so many things are getting, thrown at you all at one time.
I love your answers to these questions. And while you were speaking, I was taking some notes quite amazingly. And I
Mm-hmm.
like one of the things you mentioned, quote unquote, what's put together, societal pressure. It is quite very heavy. What is expected of a man to earn? This amount of money you need to earn as a man. This is your definition of masculinity. This is, how you should behave, etc. This is,
Mm-hmm.
it's a whole lot in there actually. And sometimes it's very difficult for people to talk about self-love, particularly as it's difficult for men in marginalized and difficult circumstances. So it's much of, and all of this weight, all of these expectations could collide together and carries this mental stress on people, on men that we often even talk about,
Oh
scarcely
yeah.
talk about. You have to be strong. Men don't cry. You don't, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
we we are not we are not meant to cry as if we are not humans. It's so funny
Yes.
and all of these things, actually, I think it's really important that sometimes we talk about it in podcast. in form of literature, as friends to friends conversation. It is very
Hmm.
important, very crucial. And I like the fact that you even have to incorporate these themes in your writing. Quite amazingly.
Yeah, I appreciate that greatly. Um, See, the reason why I'm like going and delving into all of this stuff is because um, I wrote this Struggles and Growth of a Man series, 5 book series. Cool. I was like, okay, great. You did a great series. It's about, a young man in his 20s trying to find his way, trying to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
So as I'm writing all these books, publishing all these books, things of that nature, it got to a point where I, I don't remember what exact year, but I was sitting down and I was thinking to myself, and I'm like, Mel, yo, you only wrote like one book series on men and their struggles, and you've got to delve into more different topics, of discussion, right?
Yeah.
So as I was, just, referring to, the financial struggles and for dating and relationships and expectations, that led to me saying, okay, I need to write another book series on men and the things that we deal with and struggle with, right?
Mm.
So I wrote a book series called A Man's Plight.
Mm.
And it's a 6 book series. And each
Wow.
book, you're meeting a different character. And
Wow.
I'm focusing on different social issues that we face. So there's a book on the portrayals of men in the media. That's the first book. And then I don't remember how the other books go, but I know I did discuss financial struggles,
Mm.
um, mental health,
Very important.
struggles, with marriage and divorce and
Yeah.
how men go through
Relationship.
divorce. And, here in the United States, the court system ain't friendly to us. So you not having custody of your children, giving up the house, moving into a smaller place to manage. So there's those components. So I did a 6 book series
Wow.
on that, and it delves even deeper into a lot of the stuff that men go through. So that's kind of why I pointed out a lot of different things, that we face, and we go through. And the beauty of me writing my books is I go in depth into how I write these books. So I have it in both forms. So I have it in written form through blogs, and
Oh.
then I have it also in audio format. So what happened was I started writing tons of blogs, right? And then I started my podcast, and I was like, well, there's people who read and there's people
Mm.
who listen. I
Yeah,
said,
absolutely.
so now I have to turn those blogs into podcasts. So my blogs are like 2 to 3 minute reads. So
Oh.
now I'm like, okay, I can't do a podcast for 3 minutes. Like, that's not going to work. So you get a little bit
Wow.
more info and juice with the podcast. So I said, okay. So I turned my blogs into podcasts. So now my podcast, I do between 10 and 15 minutes. You're not going to listen to any ads because we're already inundated with ads all the time. And you fully listen to an episode
Mm.
of how I wrote my book, what went into it, why. In my blogs, sometimes I'll incorporate the notes, like my brainstorming notes. You'll get to see like, okay, this is how all of this came together. So
Yeah.
with the Struggle to Go Through Man Part One, if you want to listen to the podcast, it's podcast episode number 6.
Oh.
And yeah, so my podcast is on tons of different platforms, but I also have a website where you can literally go into a specific book series and find, what book series you want. Boom, you find it, and then you get to your episode. So
Mm.
I kind of, I'm trying to make things a lot easier for people to find me and all the information.
I must say that's such an amazing, beautiful styles and format you've got already for your book, quite amazingly. Now I want to go into your poetry because your poetry often blur the line between confession and social critique. I'm not sure if you noticed that, but reading through it, that's one of the things that I cite out from my ego high in some ways. It often blurs the line between confession and I might say maybe I don't know if it's personal confession or but anyway, Well, I find it blurs the line
Hmm.
between profession and social critic. Now, do you see
Hmm.
yourself more as a storyteller of personal pain or as a cultural critic in any way? If you'd like to shed more light on this, my assumption could be wrong too. Just tell us.
No, it's more of both, but more of a storytelling aspect of it. I think it's, talking about the pain of life and, what we deal with and what we go through, the things that, we think about. I think it's, you know, really opening the door to, you know, being someone who can openly express themselves. I think that is huge. So I would say I would lean more toward the storytelling part of it, more than the social, critiquing part of it. There are books of mine that are social critique, but I'm more of that storytelling, part of it. And, once you, kind of get through part one of just, what he's dealing with and going through, then the series kind of makes its shift and certain things start happening in his life. And then you get to part three. And, so by the time you get to the end of it, you start to really understand, like, Robert's story, but then you also understand Michael's story too. Because
Interesting.
Michael kind of makes his appearance into the book series too. So, it's a beautiful thing to be able to like storytell and get you to feel and get you to empathize, with the character. I think that's the biggest part for me. Like if you can relate to that character in some way, shape, or form, like then I've done my job. And then it's
Wow.
also starting conversations and
Mm.
uncomfortable conversations. The irony of it is I literally just recorded a podcast yesterday
Oh.
talking about how I write my books to start uncomfortable conversations. So that podcast is coming very soon. So that's part of, the process and the journey. So
Mm, that's a beautiful one, I must say. Quite amazing that you mentioned all of this. Thank you for your answer to these questions. Absolutely. And I'd like to ask you, because
mhm.
many of the role models in this book are failed ones. And I would say, not even in this book. I mean, it's something like one of the things I find amazing about your work, it's how beautiful you've written a work of literature, but in it, it feels as if you've seen, studied, and see what has gone wrong in society and kind of shed more light, talk about it to perhaps and create a conversation around it or to create, you know, to let people know more about it basically. But many of the role models in the book are failed ones from drug dealers, absent father, celebrities, absent father particularly, which is very, very predominant in our current world today and quite a sad one even. But then,
Hmm.
how do you think society can create better systems of visible, positive role models for young men?
I would say it does start at a young age. That is definitely important for young kids to see the right role models.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, what we see in the media is actors and actresses, athletes, um, the models and all of that stuff. So we're seeing all the wrong role models.
Mm,
I would say it's up it's up to parents. That's the start, to put the right role models in front of kids.
mm,
But it's also the school system, providing more better role models and things of that nature. Um, it's just so funny, like that you asked that question. Once again, the role model stuff, I wrote about that. Not from the men's side, but on the women's side when I wrote when I wrote A Woman's Worth. I think that was like part three where I delved into role models. But
mm,
also on the men's side, I delve into role models in this book series called Alphabet City, which focuses on, inner city youth and, a lot of stuff that goes on in, bad neighborhoods, and stuff like that. So a role model is in that book series too. So yeah, role models are huge and important. I think it starts at a young age. Um, and I say that because of just my experiences in life and what I've seen from male role models. And,
Mm,
unfortunately, I learned more of what not to be as a man than what to be as a man.
mm.
Um, so yeah, I think that, is huge for us when you start looking at the role model aspect of things.
Your book has such an amazing trunk loads of amazing themes, subject lines, beautiful, topics that sprout further conversations, and one that you can even go on and on and on and on and on talking about because it's very predominant, it's quite real, it is so visible, so apparent in our contemporary times. Now, I want to go back again because the book carries an undercurrent of guilt, especially about failing his brother. You know, do you see guilt as a destructive
Hmm.
weight or as a motivator for growth?
I would say more as like a motivating factor for growth. I would lean more in that direction. I say that, more because, as you read this book series and you kind of, move, through, different,
Yeah.
subject matter in the book series,
Uh,
you start to see Robert making better decisions in life and wanting to take his brother along with him.
mm,
So I think, the guilt is the start of it to kind of open that door of, okay, I'm a man, I made mistakes,
mm,
but I'm going to work on correcting them and getting myself to a place where I can impact others and I can tell people my story
mm,
and get people to know and understand that you can make mistakes and you can also you can also recover from them. Not
yeah.
all mistakes, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But a good amount of them, you can make certain mistakes and be able to recover from them and progress and move toward life in a better direction.
Interesting. That's amazing. I love your answer on that. Now, you write about media and consumer culture as forces that shape identity. Now, how do you personally navigate being a writer and creator within the same media-driven culture that you particularly critique? I know this sounds like a very tough one. Oh my goodness.
Uh,
Oh
oh
goodness.
boy. See, these questions where it's like, oh, okay. All right. So uh I will say as a writer, um, I think you realize that I write these stories because I watch the world and
Mm,
I watch a lot of just what's going on.
yeah.
A lot of stuff is, you know, my experiences. There's so many books I've written that incorporate my experiences, my friends' experiences, family experiences, meeting people
Yeah.
and having conversations. Uh, I try not to like warn people that a conversation we may have may turn into a book idea because then people kind of withhold. So,
No.
yeah, it's also watching yeah, that's the thing. I can have a conversation with somebody for like 5, 10 minutes, and then next thing you know, it's like, oh, bam. And then it's like book idea.
Yeah.
And it's bad. It's bad sometimes. It's bad. It was bad for me in the beginning of my writing because it'd be like 1 o'clock in the morning and I'd wake up and then I'd just be like, great, another book idea. And I can't go back to sleep until I write the book idea in my book. And then it's like a quick thing and then go back to sleep. Thankfully, that's kind of gone away. But it is watching the world and the media and, what's pushed us, what's portrayed to us. Um, and it's kind of navigating that. and saying, I don't want to go down that path. I want to go down this path, right? So
Yeah.
we all get to forks in the road in life, and we have to make certain decisions, and some of them are better than others. But yeah, through watching the world and what's being thrown at us all the time, it's
Mm.
uh it's making sure that I'm writing the right things,
Yeah.
because it's not just me writing for now and for our generation, that are going to come across my content. It's also writing for that 10-year-old kid that's, you know, learning certain things about life, and then they get to adulthood, and they're trying to navigate, how to, be the best versions of themselves.
Oh.
And they come across my content, and it's like, oh, so it's, writing
Yeah.
this, yeah, great for now, but
That's true.
this is for generations behind us. You know
Mm.
what I mean? So
Absolutely.
it's a big, yeah, it's a big component for me.
Mm.
I'm more about longevity and legacy.
Mm.
And I would say a large amount of my books can be read now. They can be reread by a person who has purchased my books, and it's also, for future generations.
Mm. That's a beautiful one. That's an amazing answer you've got in there. I love your answer to that. Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing. And in your view, what role does vulnerability, men speaking openly about pain and struggles, play in breaking circles of violence, addiction, and dysfunction? I would love your answer to this.
Ah, yeah, vulnerability is tough for us as
Mm.
men, right?
Yeah.
It's like we have to be super duper careful in like who we open up to and who we
Yeah.
talk to,
Very important.
about things that we go through,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
It depends on the relationships we have with either our friends or our family and things of that nature. I'm thankful I have really close male friends that I can, sit and have, uncomfortable conversations about just, anything,
Mm.
that we're dealing with and we're going through, right?
Yeah.
Um, and with, addictions and, all of the bad things that are going on in the world, if we're not careful and how we operate through our lives, it can turn into addictions and violence and, all of the bad things that, can
Mm.
happen. I think, you know, we as men grow up in certain environments,
Yeah.
whether good or bad. I mean, I grew up, in, middle class, neighborhoods, but, there was bad neighborhoods a
Yeah.
couple blocks away. So,
Yes.
you know, um,
Totally.
men turn to, bad decision making because they don't know how to control their emotions. They don't know how to be vulnerable. And that's once again, when you're a
Yeah.
kid, hey, be tough. All right.
Yeah.
Keep that to yourself, things of that nature. And,
Mm.
that vulnerability is tough. And what happens is, a lot of young men unfortunately make bad decisions and then end up in the prison system. And then,
Yeah.
then it's at that place where it's like, oh, now I guess it's time for me to be vulnerable, you
Mm.
know? So, having the right pieces and even going to therapy and, having, mental health,
Yeah.
you know, professionals, helping us and navigate, through our lives. I think, that's very big and that's very helpful.
Very important.
I will say that, yeah, there were two NBA players a few years back that they started, talking about their mental health and their struggles. It was Kevin Love and DeMar DeRozan. And when they started kind of opening up, I think that kind of opened that door for me a little bit too. Like, oh,
Mm.
okay, like they are financially like great for the rest of their lives and for their kids and their kids' kids. and
Wow.
they're still dealing with stuff and navigating and going through things. And that kind of opened that door for me. And there's this show called The Shop that's executively produced by LeBron James and his crew, and it's on YouTube, and they have a lot of different celebrities from all different facets, and they talk about a lot of stuff of what they deal with, what they go through, fame, finances, how they navigate through their careers, and they open up about a lot of different things. So you got to have good platforms, to give people the opportunity to be vulnerable.
That's an amazing one, really. Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing. That is really helpful, so deep, thought-provoking, and beautiful. Now, finally, the book ends on a note of hope and potential, which is a section that I so much love
Hmm.
and admire, of all the weightiness, the beauty of it, the teachings. Because I think one of the things I found about the book, it's very didactic in nature. It is very teaching. It teaches you something you need to know of, to be aware of, which I find
Hmm.
to be quite commendable actually. Thank you for a good job. Well done, actually. But then the book ends on a note
Thank
of
you.
hope and potential. Now, do you believe that growth is always possible, regardless of one's background, or are there limits shaped by environment and opportunity in some ways?
I think there's always room for growth, no matter what your situation is, no matter what you've dealt with or gone through. I think it's just a matter of how you navigate through it and how you figure out, um, what's best for you. Um, I've seen, people have bad lives and turn it around, and then I've seen
Yeah.
people who have
Oh.
had good lives and then go downhill, you know, and that's within family, friends, life, meeting people, different experiences, things of that nature, right? So I would say, it doesn't really matter, what your circumstances really are.
Mm.
I think there's always opportunity for growth. There's prime example, there's a tattoo artist, that I follow who's here, in Phoenix, Arizona, whatever the case is. And, I was just scrolling on, her page the other day looking at, different clients and artwork. And, there's this post where she shares some very deep stuff that she experienced and went through literally a few years ago in regards to her family. And that was the shift in her life. And now she's a owner of a tattoo shop, and
Imagine
she
that.
does so well for herself. She's growing her clientele, and what I'm saying? So
Mm.
that's a story of resilience. And, when I tell you she saw something really traumatic that it lives in her head, like she closes her eyes a lot of nights and that visual is still there.
Mm.
um, you know, that's a really beautiful thing to see that she's kind of learned, so much about herself and who she is. And, she's only in like her early 20s, and she's kind of literally come into her own. So it's those type of stories that allow me to, continue writing the books that I do. And it allows me to really learn and understand people and their experiences.
Mm. That's an amazing one, actually. I love your take on this. Quite amazingly, quite awesome, so beautiful and powerful. And just in case we have some viewers who are watching this interview, I would love to get a copy of any of your books. On what platform is it available on for purchase?
My books are available in pretty much a lot of places. So I would say Barnes and Nobles, Apple, Kobo, Smashwords, Scribd. And if you want to get books from me personally, I'm on Gumroad. So you can, pretty much find my books there. It's much easier just to, go to my website, which is aquarianmindrights.com. You can go to the Struggles and Growth of a Man series, and there's links there to where you can, get copies, of my ebooks. My paperbacks are available on a website called thebookpatch.com. They ship worldwide. So they have warehouses in, you know, various countries. So you'll be able to, you know, access, you know, my books there also. Once again, if you're on my website, you'll be able to just click and boom, it takes you right to where it needs to be. I try to make it as easy and and I may try to make it as easy and accessible for people. We live in a fast world. We want everything quick, so I
Yeah,
try to make it very easy for everyone. So,
very
mhm.
true. That's quite amazing. And I left a link in the description part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of Jamell Crouthers' books directly on Amazon and Barnes& and Nobles on his website and also on other platforms. I also left a link to Jamell's social media pages for possible followings. So thank you so much, Jamil, for accepting the invitation to come up,
All
sit
right.
with me over the internet space to have this beautiful conversation around your amazing body of literature work. I'm also reading your book. It's quite impressive for me and reviewing it is quite beautiful as well. And to finally sit down to have this conversation with you, it is really enlightening. My curiosity has been satisfied, and I'm satisfied. And I hope the viewers are in some ways and also get curious to find out more about your writing. So, thank you very much once again for sitting with me today over this beautiful table conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure as well.